on the Cambridge Ball State Cardinals Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome to Fast Break, a Ball State athletics podcast dedicated to the Cardinals women's basketball team. Presented by Cambridge, here are your hosts, Dom Liacani and Sam Niger.
What's going on, Cardinal fans? Welcome to episode number 8 of Fast Break, a Ball State women's basketball podcast presented by Cambridge. I'm Dominic Liacani, as always, joined by my guy, Sam Niger. We have a ton of stuff to recap today. We've got 4 games to go over, all victories once again for the Cardinals, who are now a perfect 11-0 in conference play for the first time in program history. We've got an incredible interview with Associate Head Coach Audrey Spencer, and then we'll take a look at what is coming up next, including the MAC Sun Belt Challenge against James Madison, a team that is also a perfect 12-0. Well, one more game the Sun Belt has played than us compared to us in the MAC, but still an unblemished team in that league as well. Sam, what an exciting episode today, and we've got a really good one.
At what point does it become business as usual with this Cardinal team, Dom? 4-0 again over these past 2 weeks. An exciting episode to break down again today, and we've got some great games on tap for the Cards over the next 2 weeks as well.
So we take a look at the 4 games we're going over. The victory at NIU, the victory at Ohio, the victory against Western Michigan, and then the victory against Bowling Green. Like you said, it's business as usual. There's really nothing new with this team. And this was a team at this point last year in the season, 10-0, dropped a heartbreaker against NIU.
Yeah.
That maybe kind of changed the landscape of how that season looked last year, but there's no stopping this team right now. It's all gas, no brakes. The senior class knows what's at stake.
They do, and of course there's always the worry in the back of the mind that if you do drop one, the same thing will happen. But as Audrey Spencer is going to tell us, like, it is all about this team's mentality right now and their ability to fight through this adversity, but also knowing that this is just their last shot. They're trying to make the most of any opportunity that comes their way. So even if they do end up dropping a game here in the next couple of weeks, they're not going to let it affect their season too negatively.
Let's start by taking a look at the victory at Northern Illinois from a couple of weeks ago on Saturday. An 81-62 victory. Again, I had mentioned this was a Ball State team that last year, almost exactly to the date that they played a couple of Saturdays ago, they dropped a heartbreaker in overtime to NIU by 6 points. That was a game that the Cardinals were heavily favored in. They were trying to go 11-0 for the first time in program history. They had already set a record for consecutive wins to start a MAC season, and then that's where it kind of just all that momentum halted because the Cardinals had 14 straight wins. This year, there was redemption on the mind of a lot of these players because with how many returners, 8 returners from last year's team had that game on their mind, and they put up nearly a 20-point victory. Just utter domination, especially in the second half. It was very close after the first quarter. The Cardinals were down by 2, but they made it happen with 2 different 25-point quarters in the third and the fourth, 50 combined points in the second half. That's going to play.
I'll be honest with you, Dom. I was worried after that first quarter. Saw that final score at the end of the first, 15-13 in favor of NIU, and I was just thinking to myself, oh no, is this happening again? I know DeKalb is a tough place to play, don't get me wrong.
Very.
But we saw it. The senior leadership turned on the Jets in the second half. Allie Becky, no points in that first quarter. She finished with 20 points, 6 boards, and 5 assists. Now, that's business as usual for Allie herself, but the rest of the team followed suit. 17 for Lachelle Austin, 11 for Maddie Bischoff. MJ had 13 off the bench. It was a Ball State team that faced some adversity early, but overcame it and ultimately ended up doing exactly what they were supposed to do with a big win.
A huge win for the Cardinals in a very tough place to play on the road. And not only is it a 4.5, 5-hour drive, but you're in the most western part of the MAC, not an easy place to play with that atmosphere. Very, very tight-knit stadium, or arena, I should say, the Convocation Center is. Fans are on top of you. A lot going on there, and the Cardinals start that week 1-0 with another big win, and this time against NIU, a much-needed win. Then you take a look at the victory against Ohio from last Wednesday, 83-61 that final, and what's new with Allie Becky? Absolutely nothing. 23 points on 9 for 11 shooting. 5 for 7 from deep. Maddie Bischoff was also 5 for 7 from deep. The Cardinals just 1 3-pointer shy of tying a program record for single game 3-pointers made. I don't know, Sam. You were at the Convocation Center in Ohio. What did you see that was different about the 3-point shooting in this contest specifically compared to maybe the rest of the year?
I saw a team that just hit threes early and never took their foot off the gas. Occasionally, when this Ball State team misses a couple of threes early, credit to them, they go down into the low blocks. They change up the angles, but this team is also mature enough to know that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you're on, continue to go with what you're on for that day. And Ball State was on from beyond the three-point line. Did it slow down a little bit in half number 2? Sure, but when you drop 16 threes, you're not going to lose very many games. What I saw was a game that was absolutely boring at halftime. I mean, 29 points in the first quarter, 24 in the second quarter for Ball State. At halftime, they were up huge as Ohio only had 26 points in the entirety of that first half. Ball State just didn't take their foot off the gas, and they continued to push forward for what was a pretty dominant victory over a team, again, they were supposed to beat by that much.
So the Cardinals improved to 9-0. We do have to mention Allie one more time.
True.
12 assists? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, a double-double.
And that one behind the back, again, it's like deja vu. Like it was the exact same play to Marie.
Yeah, it was back-to-back and double-doubles for both Allie and Marie that day. Marie had 10 points, 16 boards.
Career high.
Yeah, Allie had those 23 points and 12 assists. So both of those players play into their strong suits, and they both come away with double-doubles. It's great stuff.
And then, of course, we mentioned Maddie Bischoff, 15 points, 5 3-pointers made. It really seems like she's starting to find her groove back ever since coming off of injury, especially stroking it from beyond the arc.
Well, when you injure your arm, hand, wrist, whatever it was, we never got the official ruling, but when you injure that part of your body as a three-point specialist, there's going to be some concern. Is she going to be able to have that clean shooting form that she's been known for? It took her a couple of games to get back. Obviously, you're just trying to get your hand feeling back where it was. It seems that after that Ohio game, she is back into her full form, and that's going to be much needed for the Cards down the stretch.
Allie also picked up her 9th career MAC Player of the Week, by the way. That's a big milestone for her. Congratulations, Allie. All right, we take a look at the next week, the turnaround into another Saturday, and you take a look at a 10-point victory against Western Michigan. One of the more slimmer margins of victory that the Cardinals have had to deal with, only 8 points in the first quarter, but went on a 14-0 run to start the third, really broke it open in the second half. And you take a look at the numbers. Alex Richard, a career-high 23 points, 8 for 13 from the field. It felt like every other second in the start of that third quarter, towards the middle part, she was just getting to the line, drawing fouls, collecting offensive rebounds. She's a force down low, some of the best post moves in the Mid-American Conference. She put them on display against Western. And
it seems like every single game we are talking about a different member of the core four, and that's the beauty of this Cardinals team. Against Ohio, it was Maddie and it was Allie from deep. We talked about Marie's big rebounding game. Now against Western Michigan, Ball State needed Alex Richard. I mean, 23 points and 9 boards. She was the only player who was playing with high efficiency. Allie was 5 for 13 on the day, 3 for 6 from three-point land. She played all 40 minutes, but it was not Allie's best day. 17 points is a great performance, but that was the Alex Richard game, and she was what took Ball State over the hump to get the dub against a Western Michigan team that has given some really good squads in the MAC a lot of trouble.
Yes, they've been giving teams a lot of fits, and maybe a team that has surprised some people, especially coming into conference play with where they sit right now.
They held Toledo to 38 points the game before.
It was a 41-38 victory.
It was 41-38. That's just not something that you see in college basketball anymore. Yeah, especially at Toledo. So this is a Western Michigan team that is really a wild card. They're going to be a tough draw come tournament time. Not something for Ball State to worry about just yet, but it was good to see them get the win in that fashion at home.
Final game we take a look at this past Wednesday, 71-51, the final against Bowling Green, a team that, again, is in the middle of the pack. They have statistically a very good offense, especially in conference play. I know Brady had mentioned that, looking at the analytics, they were the second best offense in league play, but the Cardinals, after a bit of a back-and-forth start with the Falcons, pulled away late in the first and then never really looked back from there.
I was surprised that Ball State was able to pull away so quickly just because this Bowling Green team has played Ball State so well as of late. There was a little extra added pressure of, if we win this game, we do have the best start in conference play in the history of our program.
And we've beaten every single MAC team.
And you talked about it a little earlier. When Ball State had the chance to do that last year, that was when they dropped the game at NIU. So there was a little extra oomph in this attack for Ball State, and it really paid off. Again, 4 players in double digits. You had 2 double-doubles between Allie, Becky, and Alex Richard. 17 points, 10 assists for Becky. 17 points, 11 boards for Alex Richard. That's the second time over the span of 2 weeks with 2 players recording a double-double apiece. So I mean, the team was rolling. They won by 20, a lot more than perhaps a lot of people expected, but it just shows how dominant this Cardinals team is over the rest of the MAC at the moment.
I think maybe the most underrated thing to look statistically at that game, obviously it jumps out like a sore thumb when you look at the 12 for 23 three-point shooting. A lot of people will tell you the score, 20-point blowout, right?
Yeah.
Like the Cardinals were just efficient. They were efficient from the field. They did shoot 42%, but the three-point shooting was, again, just different in this one. 52%, Matty Bischoff tying a career high in triples made in a single contest. Again, that's going to play to the strong suits of the Cardinals. They've been proving that they can get it done down low in the paint with the size they have, and if they need to adjust, shoot the three ball.
And the big difference in this one compared to the Ohio game was that Ball State didn't overshoot the three. Against Ohio, they got a little too big for their britches. I think they hucked up 33 threes and made 16 of them. Against Bowling Green, they were more choosy with when they were pulling up from distance. 12 for 23. They shot 10 less threes and only made 4 less. So if that's what it takes to get it done, being a little more choosy with when you shoot the three versus when you get the ball down into the low blocks with Alex Richard or Marie Kiefer, I think that could be the difference. It was one of the most balanced offensive attacks I've seen from Ball State, and that says a lot because they have a pretty balanced attack nearly every time they play.
Before we wrap up this segment, I want to go ahead and take a look at the Mid-American Conference standings up to this point because we are more than halfway through MAC play. Some big results from Wednesday as well, with both Kent falling and Buffalo falling. Kent on the road against DeKalb, it almost felt similar to what the Cardinals did last year in DeKalb, falling in a heartbreaker. The Golden Flashes made a heck of a comeback at the end, but just couldn't pull it off. And then nearly a buzzer beater to tie it from Chella Watson of Buffalo, just falling short at Toledo. So both of those teams are 8-3, trailing Ball State, who is still the only undefeated team in the conference at the top at 11-0. But that's now a big 3-game lead over two teams that we know we're probably going to give the Cardinals the best fight in these conference standings. And you look at it now, a bunch of teams jumbled up for second. With how deep we are in conference play and with the end near here, I think the Cardinals can feel very comfortable with the position that they're in.
They should feel comfortable, especially knowing that they already got those road wins against Buffalo and Kent State.
Exactly.
So when you face the Bulls and you face the Golden Flashes, it's going to be in the confines of Worthen Arena, and that's where Ball State seems to shine. Is that game at Toledo probably the next best test in conference play? Absolutely. That is a tough place to play, Dom. It's a place that's given Ball State trouble before, and although the Rockets have not been as on point this season as they have been in years past, they know how to win in their home arena, and Ball State has to know that. So even though they've got a nice, comfortable lead, perfection is the goal at the moment. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, but in terms of where the standings are shaking out, Ball State's got to be feeling really great about this first place spot.
First four out right now in the MAC standings: NIU at 4-7, Akron at 3-8, Ohio at 2-9, and then Eastern Michigan still winless in conference play, 0-11, 1-20 overall on the year. But Ball State obviously in first, Buffalo, Toledo, and Kent jumbled up at 2. Miami and Western sitting in fifth right now, both at 6-5, and then Bowling Green and Central Michigan tied for 7th, but in those final 2 spots to go to Cleveland right now at 5-6. This is going to be a very interesting conference to watch out for late to see who can slide in at the last second.
Some days, Dom, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of parity in the conference. It's really anybody's game. Other times I'm like, this conference really is not that great overall in terms of mid-major basketball. I think the conference has just kind of set itself up as being one of the crazier conferences in college basketball. Before the game on Wednesday, there were just 4 teams in the conference with a record above 500. I don't necessarily think it comes down to this conference being good or not good. It just comes down to everybody beats everybody up, and you've got to be ready to roll with the punches, even if you're a team at the top like Ball State.
It's going to be a very interesting last stretch to the season for not only the Cardinals, but for MAC opponents as well. All right, we'll take a quick break here on Fast Break. When we come back, we have probably one of our more favorite interviews that we've done on this podcast so far. We got to sit down with associate head coach Audrey Spencer and get to chat about a little bit about recruiting, what it was like recruiting the Core 4, and just what it's like coaching this team. That's coming up next here on Fast Break. Don't go anywhere. This is Fast Break presented by GameBridge.
Sometimes it's not the moment. It's the moment before the moment. The moment you make a choice. The moment you take control. The moment only you can own. GameBridge lets you invest on your terms, so you're not only in charge of this moment, but all the moments to come. Start investing now at Gainbridge.io.
Hey, Cardinal fans, welcome back to episode number 8 of Fast Break, presented by Gainbridge, of Ball State Women's Basketball Podcast. Dom Leacani, Sam Niger with you, and now we are very pleased to be joined by Associate Head Coach and Audrey Spencer. Coach, thanks for making the trek over here. Is this your first ever podcast?
Yeah, I think it is.
You excited?
I am excited.
Good. Well, we're happy to have you. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
No problem.
So, before we even get into the basketball, I have a question for you regarding something I saw in the offseason. This was probably way before. So this was on the Instagram feed.
Oh, gosh.
It was a picture of you and Brady, and Brady was kind of smirking, sitting. You know exactly where I'm going with this.
I do, yes.
He was wearing a shirt that said, "Audrey is the best," and the caption was, "I lost a bet." So what was that bet?
Yeah. Okay. So the shirt actually said Audrey is awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
My apologies.
That's okay. Yeah. So we are in. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about this, to be honest with you, but we'll go with it. We're in a family fantasy football league.
Okay.
So I started it a few years ago for my brother, who recently passed in March, but he loved it. We would do it. My parents were involved, my kids were involved, my husband, and then some extended family. So this year we decided, I'm like, okay, well, let's do it with the people that were around all the time. So again, it was still family, some friends. Brady got involved. Casey's in it. Everybody's in it, right? So Brady, you know Brady, right? So he's the best at all things. And he, I think, had the second overall draft. Like,
Okay.
you know how they rank all that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know that they even ranked all that. And actually my son, who's 9, his buddy Landry is in it as well. He's also 9. He had the number 1 draft, and so beat Brady there. So
Great.
he wasn't, right?
Great start.
Yeah, wasn't overly thrilled about that. And then I'm pretty sure my husband had the worst draft, and I was somewhere in the middle. I never win these things. Mike Fleck's in it too, so like I think he won last year and has like lived it up for forever, right? So that's just what he does. So Brady and I were head to head one week, and we're like, okay, well, let's do a little side bet here. So if I lost, I had to wear a shirt with something about like Brady is, I don't even know. I have a lot of adjectives for Brady that probably should go on the shirt. But I was going to have to wear it to practice. And I'm like, okay, well, if I win, you have to wear it. He's like, you're not winning. And I'm like, okay. So I think it ended up being, like, I think I won by quite a bit. And it was like on like the Monday night game is when I took the lead and won. He wasn't thrilled about it. So then I had to figure out how to get this shirt made, right? So my mom has like a Cricut or whatever, and I'm like, Mom, listen, this is the best and most important job I'm ever going to give you. I need a red shirt, and I need it to say Audrey's awesome. She's like, on it. And so she made it, got it to us, and then he had to wear it to practice. And the girls gave him so much crap, all practice. And then and my luckiness that I have, right, Caroline was there. So she documented
There you go.
all of it. Recruits were calling about it. Like, it was awesome. It was the best thing.
That is hilarious. Where does that chemistry between you and Brady come from, do you think?
Years, right? I mean, we're family at this
Yeah.
point. I couldn't have fallen into a better situation when he got this job. He likes to tell the story that I was, 11 months pregnant, which can't be a thing. But I was really, really pregnant when he got the job with Hadley, my first child, and kind of freaking out, right? You're jobless, your first kid's on the way, and you're like, oh boy, like what's going to happen? He got the job, and he was willing to keep me on as the director of ops. And then I feel like I've earned my keep a little bit, and he's, been a great mentor and helped me along the way as we've gone here. So.
What was the transition like for you? Because you were a stud here, obviously. You were a stud player here. Don't shake your head. You know you were. You know you were, Coach. What was the transition like from going from player to coach? When did you realize that I want to coach?
Yeah, so pretty early on. My undergrad was sports administration, or I think it's management now, but I knew I wanted to be in the sports world. When I decided I didn't want to go play and continue to play, coaching was the next best thing. So I had that conversation with Kelly Packard, who was my coach at the time. I think mid-year of my senior year, somewhere in line with that, and just told her what my interest level was and all the things, and she was really supportive, really good. She sent me to the So You Want to Be a Coach program around the Final Four. It was in San Antonio that year. It was fun, and I learned a ton, got to meet a lot of people. And then it just lined up where there was an opening on her staff as the director of ops, and she was awesome enough to give it to me. And I mean, the rest is history, right? Never left. Here I am.
And Coach, now you're focused a lot on the recruiting side of things. What was the original plan when you got into recruiting? What led you to that, and how do you feel like you've adapted to that?
So the biggest part of coaching in my eyes, and the thing that I love the most, is the relationships. So whether that's with our current student athletes or with the people you're trying to recruit and go get. So early on, I didn't have any recruiting responsibilities. So I dove into our roster and creating those relationships. Now, I'm lucky enough that I've been in the state of Indiana my whole life. So I have a lot of those relationships with coaches, AAU guys, all of that. But once I got flipped and Brady gave me the responsibility as an assistant coach to go recruit, I was so excited, like so excited, because then I could use those relationships that I had to make our program better. And I dove in, and I'll be very vulnerable here. So I dove in right away and tried to go get one of the best players in the state of Indiana, that first class in the 2018 class. And I struck out, probably rightfully so, right? But I'll never forget it. She called crying, absolutely in tears, because she had to tell me no. And I'm like, okay, I did something that she felt that strongly about it, and it made her feel that way. As much as it hurt, and my husband will tell you, for the first few years of recruiting, every time I lost a big recruit, like I'd go make some ridiculously big purchase. And I think after that one, I bought a sectional couch for our basement that he was not happy about. He's like, okay, if this is what we're doing, then you can't miss. Like, you got to get them, or we're going to be bankrupt. Like, you've got to go get these kids. And I'm like, okay. But it's just the relationship part. Like, I absolutely love it. I think we're trending out of that now, which is going to be an adjustment for me. But I think if you ask those kids on our roster that have been with us, they're going to vouch for that. It's the relationships, it's the people, it's how much we care about them, we're loyal to them. And I think they would all say that.
I'm very curious because Sam and I were talking before this. We want to know the recruiting stories. We would say the core four, but obviously Alex came in as a transfer too, so you can talk about that, getting her as well. But what was it like recruiting Allie, recruiting Maddie, recruiting Marie? What was that process like, getting that whole class together and maybe looking at it and saying, this is probably one of the best freshman classes that we could have brought in, and now look what they've turned into?
Yeah, so I take huge pride in that class. Allie obviously was the big one, and she was getting recruited by everybody, right? We started early. I got on the phone with her early, went and watched her a ton, and just became like a fan, right? So there was a lot of late night conversations on the phone about her game or what was going on with her life or all the things, right? And it just built. I think she would say that was a big part of it. I mean, I don't know that, but I think she would. And then, so like, again, a lot of hours on Allie Becky, right? Story of my life. My world revolves around Allie Becky. And it's just continued, right? She's in my position, all the things. And I love her. She's great human, great kid. She was raised the right way. Like, her kudos to her parents. She is a wonderful human being. And then you go to Marie, who was the next one to commit. I saw her in an AAU game. We had our eyes on her. She was on our list. She was playing one of the best teams out of Florida. Big, strong, athletic team. She was on the Kentucky Premier team. We were in, I think, Washington, D.C. Like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I'm sitting on the sideline, and I'm watching, and she's just kind of going through the motions. Like, she's big, athletic, 6'3", skilled, all the things. And then she got plowed over in some play, and it absolutely ticked her off. And you saw this switch in her that totally flipped. And I think she went on like a 10-0 run by herself on a really talented Kentucky Premier team, right? That she wasn't the main kid on that team, but got so mad, and it just like fueled something in her. And I'm like, I either texted or called Brady immediately, and I'm like, we need her. Like, she's got it, and we're just going to have to get it out of her for however long, but like, she's got it. So that was her story, and then obviously the relationships and all the things happened from there. But I just told her that story like 2 weeks ago.
I remember that
Yeah.
on the Ohio trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of Marie. And then Maddie, we had watched, obviously Indiana kid. She was on one of the better AAU groups. We had watched her and watched her and watched her. And finally it got to the point where we either had to like come on or no. And I can't remember. She was late. She was a late sign, like for that class. She was the last one. And she, once we decided that we wanted her, we got on the phone with her and had the conversations. And again, just another really good kid. Brady and I really, well, and all of our staff, we value, like, we don't want to recruit knuckleheads. Like, we don't have to. We're too good to have to do that. Like, I don't want to follow them to class and make sure they go. Like, I don't want phone calls at 2 a.m. Like, I don't want all that, and we don't have to. And so those kids built this culture from there, right? And we don't have to do that because of them. And then you go to Alex, who we knew out of high school, didn't quite pull the trigger on her then, which she would still probably be mad about. And looking back, so are we. And goes to, that school in Indy, and has an okay freshman year. I remember watching her against IU her freshman year. I think she put up like 25 or something, and like had a game, right? And we're like, okay, like what are we doing? And so when she went in the portal, it was a no-brainer to try to go get her. And obviously she was really good friends with Maddie and knew the others. And then, I mean, what an addition that was.
So I'm not sure if you've tuned into the pod before, but we had Alex and Maddie on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling us about how growing up in their youth careers, their AAU careers up through high school, they're like, we hate Allie Becky. We can't stand Allie Becky. How do you get these kids to gel once they actually get here?
I think so. The perception is that they know each other on the court, and that's it, right? They're not, because they're from different areas, different schools, they didn't play AAU together, they don't know each other off the floor. So it's just perception, right? And so they assume that that's reality. Well, you get them here, and you get them on a visit, and they start talking, and they're like, oh, we have a lot in common. Like, she's not as bad as what we thought she was.
Right.
Yeah, she can be a turd on the court, but I'd rather play with that than be against it 100% of the time. And so it's really on them. Like, they do that part. When I talk about the relationships between us and them, like, they do that. They build that off-the-court relationship. And those four in particular have been tremendous at that and bringing others in, right, and allowing the freshmen to be a part of it or the sophomores. Or, like, they just do a really good job, and people want to be around them.
I'm curious because Alex had also told us on the pod last time that she had known that she wanted to come here, but she kind of put you guys on edge a little bit, waited towards the last minute to tell you, hey, I'm coming here. What was that like when you finally got the confirmation from her? That
is 100% Brady Sally's fault as well. Okay. So let me put that out there. Yeah, she was obviously getting courted by everybody, right? A lot of people wanted her. I mean, again, all these kids, like, you got to beat people to get them. And so I was feeling good about it, right? And the last conversation that we had with her, I was like, oh, I think we might get her, right? That kind of thing. So she calls. Listen, they always call Brady when they have the good news that they want to come here. I always get the calls when they don't.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how that works. And then I usually have to either go tell Brady that we didn't get him, or I force in the kids to call him. Like, okay, well, you got to call him too. Like, that's part of it. But anyways, that's been a whole other story. Another great part about being an assistant. So she calls Brady and tells him she wants to come, right? So he knows. And he's like, okay, we're going to play a trick on Audrey.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. So he's like, okay, just tell her that, through the process, it was great. It was, I'll tell her exactly what to say and how to say it, and that she was going to go somewhere else, knowing that would put me in a full-on tizzy.
Yeah.
Like, I would be destroyed. And so here she calls, and we're in the practice facility. We're either doing workouts or something. So I answer it, and she literally, like, it's like the woe is me voice and, like, the really, like, disappointment. And goes through the whole thing. And then she gets to the very end, and she's like, just kidding. I'm coming to Ball State. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'm like, you're going to fit in great. Yeah, but that was Brady's fault.
That's awesome. You mentioned earlier about how just the sport as a whole is kind of taking a step away from recruiting these high school kids. A lot more focus on the transfer portal right now. the team, Ball State, seems to have adapted really well to it. Why do you think that is? Because a lot of mid-major programs seem to have not adapted to it as well.
I think it speaks volumes to you still have to recruit high school kids, and we're going to. Now the evaluation of these kids is ginormous. Like, you can't miss. So I do think that, yes, we are still recruiting high school kids. I do think, though, because we do such a good job at recruiting high school kids, that even if they choose not to come here on the front end, we have the relationship with them when they go in the portal. So now we're not going in there blind. So we're not bringing kids to our program that we don't know or that we don't have any intel on. So I think, like, you see that with the 4 that we brought in. Like, Lachelle's from our conference. We knew a ton about her, obviously. And we had said I think it was the year before, that if she went in, we were going to go try to get her.
Yeah.
It just happened to be a year later.
And that's funny because when we had Lachelle on, when she got the email from you, she was like, huh? She was so surprised that she was like, Ball State wants me?
Yeah. And well, she's a heck of a player, and she doesn't give herself a ton of credit. And we're still working through that, but she's a great player. She, like, to me, as molded into this player that we needed and is the best version of herself. So that part of it's so awesome to see. You can't see my goosebumps, but I have goosebumps talking about her because I love her. And the disappointing part about the transfer portal is I only get 8 months with her, right? And we all do. And she's going to be in our lives forever,
Right.
which is the cool part, right? So yeah, anyways, I digress, but love that kid. So Lachelle, right? We knew her. She came out of our conference. Elise Stuck, we recruited out of high school. She just chose something different. So when I called her, it wasn't a cold call, like my name popped up and she's like, oh yeah, I remember her, type of thing, right? And then you've got MJ, obviously we have the relationship with Mariah. And then Tess is the one that we didn't necessarily know. But we knew enough people around her. And Tess was really, really upfront with everything going on in her world on the very first conversation. I remember it was like a 45-minute conversation and she put it all out there. And was very honest about everything, which to me, like, kind of negates all the red flags per se that you would have because she was so upfront with it. And you can't tell me that kid's not going to be beneficial for us. Who knows? Maybe in the next month, for sure in the next few years. So we're excited about her too. But I just think you have to be picky and choosy, just like you have to be with all things, right? When you're bringing these kids into a program where we have so much success and we know what we're looking for, we know how to coach them. So we're not bringing in knuckleheads because we don't have to. Now we do our due diligence and we make sure we know on the front end who these kids are. Am I saying we're 100%? No, absolutely not. Like, yeah, we're going to miss. We're human. But we just have to be really careful in the next however long because you don't get a ton of misses to have right now.
I want to talk about you specifically because you're an Indiana kid through and through. Going back to your playing career here, before even that, I want to talk about your recruitment process to Ball State. How did Ball State get on your radar, and when did you officially decide, yeah, I want to be a Cardinal for 4 years?
Yeah, so it was early. They did a great job recruiting me. And I would say they probably taught me how to recruit. They were all about relationships. They were on this is going to make me sound really old, but the AOL chats, back in the day, that was a thing, the messenger. And Coach Mack, actually, she was the lead, whatever, recruiter on me. So she did a great job. But I came to campus for like a team shootout type deal, freshman or sophomore year of high school. I can't remember exactly when because I'm getting old and I can't remember. But after that shootout, Tracy Roller, who was the head coach at the time, brought me to center court, and her and Coach Mack sat me down at center court and offered me a scholarship. And then from then on, the relationship just grew, and they were invested, and they knew what they wanted. And they also were recruiting a AAU teammate, well, a couple that were a year above me. So, like, they were just doing a really good job in the state of Indiana. And then, so you keep playing, right, because I'm not making that decision at 14. Right. You gotta give it some time.
Right.
So kept playing, and some of the big dogs came in, so-called big dogs, right, is what I like to call them these days. But then they were. So you had the Michigan States, you had the IUs, you had the Iowas, right, that had all offered, and went on all the visits, did all the stuff, but I just kept getting drawn back to the people here, and I knew I wanted to make an impact. I didn't want to go sit, and I knew that this could be the place for that. I would like to say I wanted to stay close to home too. I'm a big family person.
You're Kokomo, right?
I am. Yep. So an hour and 10 minutes to home, still an hour and 10 minutes to home, which is awesome with my parents and their grandkids, my kids. It's been tremendous, but they just did such a good job of making me feel wanted, telling me the plan, right, of who they were recruiting and what it was going to look like, the vision and all the things. And that's when Bowling Green in our league was, I mean, they were the ones to beat and had been for a long time. Kurt did a great job there. So, yeah, I just think they taught me how to recruit. They did a great job doing that, and it allowed me to turn down some of those so-called big dogs to come here. And I used it, like that story I used with Allie. I'm like, okay, come make an impact. Come be that kid. Come be the face of the program. And it just came to fruition, right? Like it's what it's turned out to be. And then I got here, and it was, I mean, so much fun. Are you kidding me? I had a great career here.
Coach, you've been around so many great teams, both in your playing days and your coaching days. This team feels a little different. Best start to conference play in program history. How do you keep these girls focused, knowing that they have the talent to do something special?
I think as much as we like to think we have to keep them focused, I don't know that that's the case.
Oh, yeah?
They have had heartbreak for the last 3 years, right? And we have had really good teams that have just fallen a little bit short. And they experienced all of that. Not just us, they did too, right? So that feeling, I think, is in them, and they don't want to feel it again. And they understand that the process and what we're doing leading up to that has to look a little bit different than it has in the past. And they've fallen in love with it. Are there days? Yeah. But you just got to remind them, okay, do you want to feel like that in a month? No. Right? You don't want to do that. This is it. You don't get another chance. So I do think that the last chance part of this has really sunk in with these guys. And I do think, like, they want to be at their best. Like, they're not satisfied. They know what we're getting ready to go play on Saturday. They know what that is, and what it can do for us and what it can do to propel us for the rest of the year. So, yeah, I don't think, as much as we like to think as coaches we have to do no, I think they're mature enough to understand what's going on.
We were talking a little bit off camera before we started that this James Madison contest in a good spot in the year because it really kind of shows where you guys are right now. Like this, not only is this is potentially more than just a top of your league game, right? This is a premier matchup. This is between two of the best teams in these two conferences respectively. When you look at this matchup against James Madison, what does a game like this do for your program, especially when you get down the stretch towards conference tournament time?
Yeah, I think this is a game that is played in March, right? This is a tournament game. They're a good program. They're a great team. They're playing well at the moment. So are we. I think, and our players understand this, is that, so in our non-conference, we prepared them for conference, right? So we went out and played the North Carolinas, the South Dakota States, the Texas A&M, a litany of them, right? That at the time I wanted to kill Brady for, but here we are. So we prepared them that way. Okay, this is just another game. This is another non-con game that we played for the first 10 or 11, 12, whatever it is we play. You can't have the mental lapses in these games that maybe you can get away with in our league right now. I do think it's going to, get our focus back, hopefully, right, to, okay, we can't miscommunicate on this switch and give them an easy one, because every possession matters in these types of games. So I do think that that'll be the biggest, I think, help to kind of get us back locked in to that part of it. And just the fact that, what an opportunity, right? And I don't even know that they grasp it all. We talk about it, but I don't know that they get it totally. I don't know that you ever will if you're 18 to 22,
sure.
But I do think it's a big game. Do I think it's a make or break? No. I do think it's going to help us prepare us for the last stretch of these conference games.
And when it comes down to that last stretch, just a hypothetical here for you, Coach.
I hate these.
I'm so sorry then in advance.
Okay.
If you do go on to win the MAC tournament, somebody could come up to you post game and say, Ball State won this tournament because, what would your answer be to that? Why did Ball State win the MAC tournament?
Because of the players.
Yeah,
I mean,
fair enough.
That would be my answer. It's because of the 14 on our roster. And you can make a case for, because it's such a good group of kids and the buy-in is so strong from 14 to 1, like that's what great teams go. They have that. They don't have the last 4 on the bench moaning and groaning because they're not getting what they think they deserve. They're locked in and they're cheering on their teammates and they're practicing every day against them, getting them ready for the next game. I mean, we have that. And I think that is the recipe for success.
Before we let you go, I want to talk a little bit more about you because
Oh my gosh.
You just eclipsed 350 wins as a player and a coach, and
That's just because I'm old and I've been here 100 years.
well, listen, I know you were very nonchalant about it when Caroline came up to you, and then Alex picks you up, and it looks like she's going to throw you through the ceiling of that locker room. But when you have a team that's behind you like that, every step of the way, where they know that you played the playbook, then you wrote your own, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it's everything. It's why you do this, right? Like it's for those 14 on the roster and everybody before them and everybody that comes after them. And being an alum, it just makes it that much sweeter. So I do think, again, a lot of it goes back to the culture and the kids we recruit. Like if you got a bunch of knuckleheads on, they don't care, right? They don't give two craps about me or my family or any of that. My kids are locked in. Like they know what my kids are in and what they're, like my actual kids, my 12 and my 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And they ask about that. Like they're trying to get my son out of punishment because he's got in trouble. They're family, right? And they've been around long enough that they are part of all of this. And then you bring in the good ones that we brought in from the portal and the freshmen, right? Like they've only been here a short time too, but you would never know it. Like walking into those locker rooms or walking onto the practice floor, you just would never know it. And I do think that's, if you go through and you ask all the championship teams, why were you so successful? It's because of this. And it's been good in years past, but it hasn't been this.
Yeah, Coach, we can tell. I know I speak for me and Dom both when we just love the culture of this team. It is a fun group to be around. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us today because you embody that so well.
Oh,
Yes,
well, thanks.
Thank you, Coach. And by the way, for those listening, if you have not checked out on Ball State All Access, there is a phenomenal mini documentary. It's about 10 minutes about that 2009 team. Go ahead and check it out. Of course, Audrey is featured in it, one of the superstars that helped lead Ball State not only to a MAC tournament, went over that very good Bowling Green team, but then in the first round of the NCAA tournament against Tennessee. By the way, pretty cool that last year you got to go back into EA Diddle and take care of business on your birthday.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool, yeah.
So a victory then over Western Kentucky. But Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and safe travels, both you and Sam to JMU.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks,
It's been
Coach.
Associate Head Coach Audrey Spencer. When we come back, we'll wrap up episode number 8 of Fast Break. Don't go anywhere. It's Fast Break presented by Gamebridge.
Sometimes it's not the moment. It's the moment before the moment. The moment you make a choice. The moment you take control. The moment only you can own. Gamebridge lets you invest on your terms. So you're not only in charge of this moment, but all the moments to come. Start investing now at Gamebridge.io.
Back inside episode number 8 of Fast Break presented by Gamebridge, a Ball State women's basketball podcast. Dom Liacani and Sam Niger back with you to wrap up our show. Huge thank you to Audrey Spencer for taking the time on a travel day in the morning to come and sit down with us as the Cardinals get ready to head to James Madison to take on the Dukes in the MAC Sun Belt Challenge finale for this season. But an excellent human being, Audrey, an excellent coach, and an incredible interview, a lot of great insight.
She's a great storyteller, Dom. That's one thing that I've noticed about her. She talks so much about the relationships that she has with her players, and you can tell why they're drawn to her. She just has that energy to want to attract players to the program, and she genuinely cares about them. And so definitely a big thank you to her.
We got to take a look now at what is coming up for Ball State in the next 4 contests, and we start with, we're recording this on a Friday, so tomorrow the Cardinals take on James Madison in the 2nd edition of the MAC Sun Belt Challenge this year, the 4th different time that the Cardinals have now played in the MAC Sun Belt Challenge, dating back to the start of last year. But this is the 2nd time that Ball State has been paired up with JMU late in the year, and for good reason. JMU right now 12-0 in Sun Belt Conference play, the only undefeated team in that conference at the moment. Sam, this is like Audrey mentioned, a big test to see where the Cardinals are late in the season.
And this is not just a James Madison team that has dominated their conference, also undefeated in the Sun Belt. This is a James Madison team that has had just about as much national recognition as Ball State. If you take a look at the women's mid-major top 25, the Cardinals right now, 4th in the mid-major top 25. James Madison is 7th, and they are 12-0 in their conference as well. James Madison slowly climbing those rankings. The Cardinals slowly climbing those rankings up to number 4 in the country. This is about as good as it gets in terms of a non-conference game. Is it a little odd that it's plopped in the middle of February? No doubt. But as Audrey said, it's one of those things where it's kind of a litmus test for this team. Are you going to be able to play against really great teams late in the year? If the answer to that question is yes, you set yourself up really well for Cleveland and perhaps beyond. If the answer is no at this point, then you learn lessons about your team and you take that into Cleveland when the time does come. But there is a lot riding on this James Madison game. It's going to be a fun one to watch, Dom. I can't wait.
Probably the best mid-major women's college basketball game of the day tomorrow. So
No doubt.
Make sure you tune in, 2 p.m. Eastern, ESPN Plus, the Dukes and Cardinals going at it in a premier mid-major matchup. All right, the Cardinals have a bye week coming up.
Essentially.
They do not have any action on a Wednesday, a much-needed bye week as well, with just trying to get people healthy, trying to get bodies rested and ready for the back end of action. But we take a look at the next 3 Mid-American Conference games. Don't want to, harp on these opponents too much from what we've seen from them already. But Saturday, the Cardinals head to Ypsilanti to take on the Eastern Michigan Eagles, who, like I mentioned earlier, have not won a conference game yet. And I think doing the math, if the Cardinals are able to come away with a victory against EMU, I believe that secures them a tournament spot.
I think it does, and it doesn't eliminate Eastern Michigan, but it certainly gives the Eagles a tough road to come back from. This is an Eastern Michigan team that's really struggled all year. Ball State dropped over 100 on them. I mean, there's not really a ton that you can say about this. Maybe some home field advantage might be the boost that EMU needs to at least give the Cardinals a fight, but in my opinion, Dom, this is one of those games where if Ball State plays at even a fraction of the level at which we're used to seeing them, they'll walk away with a dub.
And you take a look at Wednesday, February 19th, Toledo, a big one, on the road, one of the toughest places, if not the toughest place and environment to play in the Mid-American Conference. We know what happened last year, over 20 points, that margin of victory for the Rockets. Kind of a morale stopper, if you will, for the Cardinals late in the season last year. And you look at the roster now, and with the team that both squads had, I know the Cardinals ran through Toledo earlier this year on national TV, but I think with the chip on the shoulder, with the chip that the Cardinals have on their shoulders and knowing what happened last year, flat out, I will say they did get embarrassed last year. They got embarrassed at Toledo. I don't think they're going to let that happen this year.
You would think not, Dom, but I'm going to go out and say that Toledo's got an equal chip on their shoulder
Right.
after what happened to them on national TV here in Worthen Arena. These are two teams that do not like each other very much. They have been at the top of Mid-American Conference play for the past half decade, if not longer. They love to do battle, and they love to hate each other. And with that in mind, home field advantage plays such a big part, such a big role in this game. I mentioned in the open that if Ball State was going to drop one, this could be the one at Toledo with that away environment against a team and a program as historic and talented as Toledo. There's a lot riding on it. So whether or not the Cards are going to be up to the test is comes down to the day of, but obviously this Ball State team has played so well as of late. You have to expect that they're going to put on a performance worthy of the Cardinal and White. With that in mind, it's certainly one that they've got circled on the calendar for mid to late February.
They're definitely favored, right?
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep.
I mean, who's stopping the Cardinals right now?
That's
at this
the one,
point,
yeah.
At this point, it's been nobody.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting contest on February the 19th. Then we wrap up looking at these next couple of weeks with the Think Pink game presented by the Village Promenade on February 22nd. That is a Saturday at noon. It's Kent State coming into town. Sam, stop me if I'm wrong. Stop me if you think I'm wrong. I think it's pretty clear that Ball State and Kent State are the two top dogs in the MAC right now. You could throw Buffalo in there as well, even Toledo. Skill-wise, size-wise, I think Kent State matches up very well with the Cardinals. Again, this was a Kent State team that gave the Cardinals the most difficult fight so far in conference play, and that's saying something because the Cardinals still won by nearly double digits,
Yeah.
a 9-point victory against Kent State earlier in January. This is a game that I think favors the Cardinals because they're at Worthen Arena. But again, these are two of the top teams in the MAC going at it. You circle this one on your calendar as a must-win.
I'm certainly not going to stop you in saying that Kent State might be the other best team in the conference with Ball State. They are the only game that Ball State has played where they didn't win by double digits in conference play. Jenna Batch is also a contender for MAC Player of the Year with Allie Becky. They love to do battle one-on-one. Now, they're not necessarily going to line up one-on-one on every single play, but this is a Kent State team that has depth. They can go into the post. They have other guards that they can dish it to besides Bash. So, again, a lot riding on this game. Another must-win to really assert yourself as the dominant team. It's one of the final really big tests of the season for Ball State in the regular season. And with that in mind, I think the Cardinals are going to be ready to go inside Worthen Arena. I think they expect and want to win by more at home than they did on the road at Kent State. So they're going to be pushing for a double-digit victory. But at the end of the day, another super fun match in Mid-American Conference play, which is not something that you can say for every game that Ball State plays because they're supposed to and do dominate a lot of these MAC teams.
Sam, kind of crazy to think that we're in the home stretch of the season here.
It is.
We're almost towards Cleveland here, and barring something crazy, we know the Cardinals will be in the Mid-American Conference tournament. There is absolutely no doubt about that in my mind. They've got a healthy shot at this number 1 seed. I believe it would be the first outright regular season championship since 2003. I know they had a share of the title, I think in 2014 or 2015.
Right.
But a number 1 seed would be absolutely huge for this program. Sam, as we wrap up our show here, obviously, the Cardinals have run through the MAC right now. There's no doubt about that. They've given every single opponent they've played fits. Where do you see this program at now, more than halfway through conference play?
I see them in the best position they have been in probably the program's history to win a Mid-American Conference championship. Regular season, MAC tournament, it's all there. The sky is the limit with this team, Dom. It's all out in front of them if they want to go take it. The talent, the depth that they have across the board, it really rivals just about any mid-major program in the country. Obviously, we could be a little biased and call them one of, if not the best mid-major programs, mid-major teams in the country this year. But this is a team that is built for March, and that's something we've not been able to say about these teams as good as they have been in years past. I think this might be the year, and with 8 games left in the regular season, you got to do what you got to do over these next couple of weeks to make that come to fruition.
A fun finish coming up for BSU women's basketball. It's going to be a very, very exciting time to be a Cardinal fan once we get to Cleveland. Sam, any final thoughts before we wrap up our show?
Let's just hope it's business as usual again next week, right?
Keep stacking up those wins right now, trying to tie a program record with 14 wins that was set last year if they can get it done against JMU. So a very interesting contest. Make sure you tune into that one and tune into Sam Niger's call on the radio as well on the Gamebridge Radio Network from Learfield. But that's going to do it for episode number 8 of Fast Break. Appreciate you joining us for another edition of this one. We will see you in a couple of weeks where we've got more Ball State women's basketball hoops to talk about with how exciting and good this team is. So for Sam Niger, I'm Dominic Liacani saying so long. This has been episode 8 of Fast Break. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks for listening to Fast Break, presented by Gamebridge. The preceding has been a presentation of Ball State Athletics in Learfield.